We continue now at the top of Daf Dalet Amud Beis in Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 4b. On the previous summit, the Gemara had suggested that there's a machlokas tanoim whether yesh aim lemikra or yesh aim lemesoras, whether we follow the way the words of psukim are read or the way they are written. And Rav Acha Bar Yaakov on the previous summit asks, is there anyone that disagrees with the idea of yesh aim lemikra? Because we know the Brisa says that it says in the pasuk b'chalev imo that you can't cook meat together with milk, and we read it as chalev, meaning milk. We don't read it as chelev, fats. And why is it that we read it in that fashion? Amrit yeshem lemikra, because the Brisa says that you have to say yeshem lemikra. You have to say that we follow the way it's read. The way it's read is b'chalev imo. It's referring to cholav. It's referring to milk. And Rashi explains, Amrit yeshem lemikra v'lekaman depolik. No one argues on that. Di pligi basar b'cholav minol dasar. If they would argue, where would they learn out that basar b'cholav is asar? Everyone obviously agrees that basar b'cholav, that milk and meat is prohibited, and so therefore everyone must agree yeshem lemikra. And the Gemara continues, Ella rather you have to say dekuli alma yeshem lemikra. Really, everybody does agree yeshem lemikra, that we follow the way that the psukim are read. And so now the Gemara has to go back to all of the machlokas tanoim in the previous amud and explain that it's not really a machlokas tanoim. The Rebbe v'Rabbanan, so Rebbe and the Rabbanan b'haka miflagi, they're actually arguing as follows. This was the machlokas of whether by dinei mamanis you need to have 3 judges or 5 judges, and the Gemara understood that Rebbe says 5 judges because Yarshion is read in the plural, and the Rabbanan say we follow the way it's written. Now the Gemara suggests instead, Rebbe savar Yarshion Elohim achrini. Rebbe says that Yarshion Elohim, it's repeated, so it's talking about other judges, meaning you have to do 2 plus 2 is 4, and you can't have an even number of judges, so you get to 5. V'Rabbanan Sabri, but the Rabbanan say Yarshion Deheich, that Yarshion actually means the same judges we just mentioned above. We're not adding new judges, and so therefore it's 2 judges, and then you're going to add a 3rd judge, again, so that it should be an even number of judges. And the Bach has the Girsa of Udahai, again, we're referring to those same judges in the Pasuk, and that's why the Rabbanan say 3 judges, and again, Rebbe says 5 judges. And the Gemara continues with Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, and with regards to Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz on the previous summit in the Brisa said that the way we know that when a woman gives birth to a girl, that there are 2 weeks of tumas, because we follow the way it's read. It's shavuayim. It means 2 weeks, not shivim 70. So simply say lo pligi Rabbanan no leather. Rabbanan don't argue on Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz. Everyone there agrees. You don't have to say in that brisa that there is a machlokas tanoim. And the Gemara continues Beis Hillel with regards to the opinion of Beis Hillel. This again was a machlokas tanoim on the previous summit between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel by the korban chatas, which the blood is presented on the outer mizbeach. According to Beis Shammai, you need to have a minimum of 2 presentations of blood b'di'evid, and that was learned from the way we read the pasuk karnos, karnos, karnos. We read it in plural, and one of those karnos is considered to be ma'akev, so therefore it means to say 2 corners of the mizbeach, 2 presentations of blood are going to be ma'akev according to Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel, they say 1 presentation of blood is good by the korban chatas again when it comes to the presentation of blood on the mizbeach hachitzon. And on the previous Amud, the Gemara said that Beis Hillel learned that because they understand karnos the way it's written, and it's written in the singular, and that's why 1 is sufficient. But now the Gemara is saying, no, really, Beis Hillel agree that yeshem lemikra, we follow the way it's read. And so really, what is the source for Beis Hillel? The source is as follows. The Tanyas we learned in a brisa, v'chiper, v'chiper, v'chiper. It says v'chiper by various karbanos. Rashi says by the seir nasi, by the seir diyachid, by the kivsa diyachid, it says v'chiper. Mipnei hadin, and the reason why it says it is because you could have had a limud, and you could have had a limud in the wrong direction in terms of how many presentations of blood are needed. As the Brisa now explains, v'halodinu, because it is a limud as follows, we can learn out as follows, nemar damim lamata v'nemar damim lamala. It says damim lamata, and it says damim lamala. Rashi has a number of explanations what exactly the Brisa means when it says damim lamata and damim lamala. We'll understand it as Rashi explains his middle explanation that damim lamata means there are some times where the blood is placed below the chut hasikra on the mizbeach, and sometimes where the blood is placed above the chut hasikra on the mizbeach. Ma damim ho'amurim lamata, just like the blood when it's placed below the chut hasikra, shenitzanon b'matana achas kiper, that even 1 matana, even 1 presentation of blood is enough for an atonement. So too, the blood that's presented above the chut hasikra, even 1 presentation is going to be enough. But the Brisa continues, maybe we should go in the following direction. Maybe we should say something else. Nemar damim b'chutz, because it talks about blood on the outer mizbeach. V'nemar damim bifnim, and it also talks about blood on the inner mizbeach by the chatos hapnimios. Ma damim hu amurim bifnim, just like the blood by the cases of the chatos hapnimios by the inner mizbeach. Chiser achas mimatanos lo asav lo klum. Even missing one of the presentations of blood, it's like nothing. They are all ma'akev. So maybe we should say, Af damim hu amurim bechutz, so to the blood by the outer mizbeach, chiser achas mimatanos lo asav klum. If you leave out even one of the presentations of blood, maybe it's nothing. And so the Brisa says, Nira lemidoma, we have to see which comparison do we make? Do we do the comparison of lamata lamala, or do we do the comparison of bachutz bifnim? And the Brisa says, Don in chutz mi chutz, it's better to learn out things that are presented on the outer mizbeach from other cases where it's presented on the outer mizbeach. V'yein don in chutz mipnim, we shouldn't learn things from the outer mizbeach, from the inner mizbeach. O klach l'derech zur, maybe we should go in the following direction. Don in chatos v'dalet karnos, mechatos v'yarba karnos. We should learn chatos and the four corners from other cases of chatoses and the four corners, and we should learn from the inner mizbeach. V'al yochiach zeh she'ein chatos v'dalet karnos. Don't learn from other presentations of blood which are not referring to cases of the carbon chatos and the four corners. And so the Brisa says, Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, v'chiper, v'chiper, v'chiper. We're going to learn from the word v'chiper 3 times. Mebnei hadin, we learn as follows: Kiper, afal pishalo nasan el shlosha. The word keeper 1 time tells us even if it's just 3 presentations. Keeper, afal pishalo nasan el shtayim. Then it says keeper again. It's going to be an atonement even if it's just 2 presentations. And keeper, afal pishalo nitan el achas. And it says keeper again. It's going to be considered an atonement even if it's just 1 presentation of blood. And that is the source for Beis Hillel. And Rashi explains lashon acher, another explanation. This is Rashi's preferred explanation in terms of lamata lamala. Nemru damim lamata michut hasikra ba'ola ushlamim v'yasham. By ola and shlamim and asham, there the blood is presented below the chut hasikra. That's the idea that it's not talking about a carbon chatas over there, but it is on the outer mizbeach. V'nemar damim lamala michut hasikra. We talk about presentations of blood above the chut hasikra. Dahainu chatos behema. That's the chatos behema. Techsivi bakarnos. That's where it says karnos. Ma damim ha'amurim lamata shenitanon b'matana achas kiper. Just like the damim below the chut hasikra, even 1 presentation of blood is a kapara. That we said on the previous summit. Afilu Beis Shammai modu b'shar karbanos. Even Beis Shammai, they agree that just 1 presentation of blood is good by other karbanos. The whole machlokas is only by chatos. Techsiv v'dam zivachecha yishafech, like it says in the pasuk. And then bifnim, we also have cases of carbon chatos, but they're not on the outer mizbeach; they're on the inner mizbeach. And those examples are chatos hapnimios. Those are called the chatos hapnimios. The parkoin mashiach, v'helim davar, hatun and sheva hazayos. Those karbanos, they require 7 sprinklings of blood al haparoches v'al mizbeach hazav, on the paroches and on the mizbeach hazav, the golden inner mizbeach. Utanan bu matonachas mehen makevis, and over there it says even 1 of them is going to be makev. Even if you're lacking just 1 presentation of blood, that's going to be problematic. And the Brisa then said, Don in chatos v'nemru ba karnos mechatos hapnimios shein chatos. Maybe we should learn chatos from the chatos hapnimios. V'nemru ba karnos hamizbeach ketoras hasamim. It says karnos also over there. V'al yochiach zeh dam ha'asham. Maybe we shouldn't prove from the dam ha'asham, which is again on the outer mizbeach lamata michut hasikra she'eno chatos. That's not a carbon chatos. V'lo nemru ba karnos elasav. If it doesn't say the word karnos there, the corners of the mizbeach, it just refers to saviv, around the mizbeach. And then again, ultimately, the Brisa said we learn out from the words v'chiper that are written by the various kinds of carbon chatos that again, just 1 matana, 1 presentation of blood is sufficient according to Beis Hillel. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbanan, with regards to the machlokas tanoim on the previous summit of Rabbi Shimon and the Rabbanan. So again, on the previous summit, the Gemara had explained that the machlokas is whether we follow the reading of the psukim or whether we follow the way it's written. The Gemara had said that according to Rabbi Shimon, we follow the way it's read, basukos, 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 and one of the basukos is needed to teach the general mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah. So the other 2, each one is plural. That's a total of 4 walls. And then that last wall, the halach l'Moshe Misinai says that it only has to be a tefach, so you need 3 full walls and 1 wall that is a tefach. And according to the Rabbanan, basukos, 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 it only actually adds up to 4 total walls because 1 of them is written in plural and the other ones are written in singular. And then you drop 1 again for the mitzvah itself. That's a remainder of 3 walls, and that 3rd wall only has to be a tefach. That's what the Gemara explained on the previous Amud. But now the Gemara says, no, everybody agrees yeshem lemikra, and baha pligi, and they're just arguing as follows. Rabbi Shimon savar suchacha lo boikra. Rabbi Shimon says the schach does not require a pasuk. So therefore, again, it says basukos, basukos, basukos. One of the basukos is used for the mitzvah of sukkah, and then you have two that are remaining. That's a total of 4 walls, according to Rabbi Shimon, and the 4th wall only has to be a tefach. V'Rabbanan savri, but the Rabbanan, they hold suchacha boikra, that the schach of the sukkah boikra, that also requires a pasuk, and so therefore you have to drop again 1 basukos for the mitzvah of sukkah. You drop then one of the walls because it's needed really to teach us the idea of the schach that remains with 3 walls, and again the 3rd wall only has to be a tefach according to the Rabbanan. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Akiva v'Rabbanan, with regards to the machlokas Tanoim, Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan on the previous Amud, in terms of a revius of dam that comes from 2 dead bodies. Rabbi Akiva said that creates tumas soel, and the Rabbanan said it did not. So they're not actually arguing about yeshem lemikra, yeshem lemasores. Everybody agrees yeshem lemikra, but baha pligi, but they're arguing as follows. Rabbi Akiva savar nafshos. Rabbi Akiva says, it says nafshos, the way it's read in the pasuk is nafshos, plural, tarti mashmet, sounds like 2 bodies, and so therefore again, if the revius dam comes from 2 bodies, it creates that tumas soel. For Rabbanan savri, but the Rabbanan hold nafshos dialma mashmet, just means to say nafshos dialma. It means 1 body of the dead bodies that are in the world. And Rashi explains, nafshos dialma uliolam chada mashma, it really means to say 1 dead body. It's talking there about the fact that the Kohen Gadol cannot become tameh to a dead body. El hachi kamar, and the pasuk just means to say as follows, al achas mikol nafshos meis shaba'olam, on any one of all of the nafshos meis of the dead bodies in the world, lo yavo, he should not come. But the Gemara continues with the Kuli Alma Yeshem Lemikra, but is it really true that everybody agrees Yeshem Lemikra, that we follow the way it's read? V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, Letotafos, 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 by Tefillin, it says Letotafos 3 times, 2 of the times in singular, 1 of the times it's written in plural. Harei kan arba, that's a total of 4. It teaches there are 4 compartments by the Tefillin Shel Rosh, because again, Letotafos singular is 2, and then the Letotafos plural is another 2, that's a total of 4. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel, these are the words of Rabbi Shmuel, and you see that Rabbi Shmuel is following the way it's written, not the way that it's read. Rabbi Akiva says, Eino tzarech, you don't need to learn it in this fashion, because tat bekaspe shtayim and pas ba'afrike shtayim, the word Letotafos, it's a combination of 2 words. Tat in the language of Kaspi means 2, and pas in the language of Afriki, that means 2, and 2 plus 2 is 4. That's how you learn out the 4 compartments of the Tefillin. But in any case, you see that Rabbi Shmuel does follow the way it's written, and we just said above, everybody agrees, Yeshem Lemikra. And the Gemara continues, Ella rather liolam pligi, really change everything we just said above. Really, there is a machlokas tanoim between the whether we say Yeshem Lemikra or Yeshem Lemasores. Vahani miliki pligi heicha deshani krami masores. However, they only argue it in a situation where the pasuk is read different from the way that it is written. In a situation where the way it is read and the way it is written is different, meaning, let's say, the way that it is written is in singular, the way it's read is in plural, so then you have a machlokas, Yeshem Lemikra, Yeshem Lemasores. Do we follow the way it's read or do we follow the way it's written? But avol hai, chelev v'cholav, but over here, the proof that you brought that we follow the way it's read was from the fact that you can't cook milk and meat together, and so we read it as b'chalev imo, we read it as cholav, we read it as milk, and it seems like everybody agrees there we follow the way it's read. That's because chelev and cholav, dechi hadadininu, those are actually written exactly the same way. So there, Yeshem Lemikra, so there, of course, we follow the way it's read. In other words, b'chalev imo, by the prohibition of cooking milk and meat together, in that situation, it is true that everybody agrees Yeshem Lemikra, because the other way to read it is still written the same way. Both words would be written in the same fashion, and so we have to follow the way it's read. But when we have a situation where it is written in one way but read in a different way, then you actually do have a machlokas tanoim, whether Yeshem Lemikra or Yeshem Lemasoras. But the Gemara says, is that really true? But what about the words yira and yeroah? Those actually are written the same way. It's just a question of how it's read. Upligian, we do find the machlokas over there, whether we follow the way it's written or the way it's read. Titania, as we learned in a brisa, Yochanan ben Dahavoy Omer Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. Yochanan ben Dahavoy says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, Hasuma b'yachon me'enav. If somebody is blind in one eye, pater min hariyah, so he's exempt from riyah. That is the mitzvah and the shalosh regalim to go up to the Beis Hamikdash to be seen, so to speak. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Yira Yeroah. It says Yira Yeroah. You can read it as Yira. You can read it as Yeroah. Kederech shebaliros kach boleiros, and what we understand from that is, just like the way a person sees, that is the mitzvah of how he should appear by the Beis Hamikdash by the Shalosh Regalim. Maliros b'shteyenav, just like a person when he sees with two eyes. That's the normal way of seeing. Afleiros b'shteyenav, so too only somebody who's able to see with both eyes has this mitzvah of Yeroah, has this mitzvah to appear by the Beis Hamikdash. And so over here you see a situation where Yira and Yeroah, they are both written in exactly the same fashion. Clearly the way we read it is Yeroah, and yet we are darshaning Yira. And so therefore you see that we are applying an idea of Yeshem Lemesores even where the spelling is exactly the same. And so there is this idea that we should follow the way that it's written. So now we're back to our question, how do we know that Bachalei Vimo is referring to milk, cooking meat and milk? Maybe it's Chaylev. Maybe it's referring to a prohibition of cooking meat in fat. And so the Gemara says, El Amar Rav Acha B'Rei Ravika, rather Rav Acha B'Rei Ravika says, the reason why we know that it's milk is because Amar Kratz, because the pasuk says, Lo Sevashel Gedi. It's talking about don't cook the young goat. So Derech Bishul Asra Torah, we're talking about the normal way of cooking, which is in a liquid like milk. It's not in fats like Chaylev. And that's how you know, it's from that context that we know that everybody agrees we're talking about milk in that pasuk. And the Gemara continues, Tanur Rabban and the rabbis taught, Dinei Mominus B'Shlosha, monetary cases are with 3 judges, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Hey Amud Aleph.